Okay, well, thank you very much for attending my session today, looking at how to survive as a VR and AR startup. As was kindly introduced, my name is Sami Hamid, and I'm the co-founder of Glitch Studios, which is a VR and AR production studio based in London, Oslo, and Istanbul. So over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try and impart some of the knowledge and the lessons that we've learned as a VR and AR content producer. Some of those lessons we've learned the hard way. Some of them have been observations of other VR and AR production studios, some successful and, of course, some not so successful. Just a little disclaimer. I'm by no means a VR and AR expert. I think it would be quite naive of anyone to claim to be at this early stage in terms of content production, especially on the consumer side. And I'm not a startup guru. Everything I'm going to be telling you today are very much lessons that we've learned at the front line of being a content producer in the AR and VR industries. So who are we? Well, Glitch Studios was founded about 1.5 years ago by 3 partners, myself, Tobias, and Borge. We all come from very different backgrounds. Borge is a brand specialist and designer. Tobias is a film director, and I'm a project management by background, and we specialize in producing marketing and branding experiences for our clients around Europe. I'll show you a very short 2-minute video of some of the work that we've done both in VR and AR, and also non-AR and VR. Oh, okay, that came out a bit early. But anyway, what do you think of when you think of the AR and the VR industry? What is the kind of images that come to your mind? And I think the previous presentations today by Jeremy Dalton and also Timothy Jung, excellent presentations that were very much setting the scene for myself today as they kind of looked at all the use cases and also introduced us to this very exciting technology. Now, it's very difficult to open a magazine or read an article online without kind of getting this sort of image in your head around this emerging technology. You'll be coming across the hundreds of use cases across dozens of industries. You'll be looking at all the market forecasts, the predicted consumer adoption, and of course the big PR ticket stories such as Oculus buyout by Facebook for $2 billion, Magic Leap investment for $1.6 billion, which I think now they're asking for a further $6 billion, if any of you are following the news there. And so it's very easy to get very excited about this industry. You know, this industry is going to be very, very big. But when we cut through all the hype, when we really get off the hype train and we look at what this industry is going to be looking like over the next few years for yourselves, for people that might already have started a VR or AR production studio, potentially you're considering joining the industry with an entrepreneurial idea, what are the tangible, realistic things you should be aware of to navigate this quite tumultuous and roller coaster industry that is VR and AR at the moment? So this is one of the many predictions that you can take out your phone right now and Google it. You'll be coming across many of these white paper pieces of very hyped up market predictions. This only came out in 2016, Q1. I'm not going to say who produced it, but you can Google it yourself. And this is what head-mounted displays, so virtual reality headsets, were supposed to be selling over the last few years. Okay? So 2016, we were going to sell 15 million headsets. 2017, this year, we're expected to sell 26 million headsets. And by the end of 2018, nearly 40 million headsets. Very, very exciting indeed. Well, sorry to burst your bubble, but this is what the industry looks like at the moment. Last year, we sold only 6.3 million headsets. 2017, we're on track to sell under 10. And I think it's very difficult, unless you are a specialist in terms of analysis, to really get a solid, accurate prediction as to what the market is going to look like for 2018, considering how many new headsets are coming out, new platforms, new solutions, so in other words, software solutions as well. So I think 2018 is going to be a big question mark as to how big the industry is going to be. So as you can see here, it's a little bit bleak. When you really burst that bubble that is the AR and VR industry, you kind of see that we're not as exponential as many people are predicting. So what's holding it back? Why are we not seeing that exponential growth? Why are we not seeing that drive upwards to mass consumer adoption for virtual reality and, of course, in the more longer term, augmented reality? Well, there are many. Technology, which I think was touched upon earlier, is one of the key factors. We have bulky, awkward, heavy pieces of equipment that you're kind of sticking on your face, low resolutions, wires, price point issues as well. It's still very expensive, VR and, of course, AR. Behavior and social acceptance. How many of you in the last 12 months has seen someone on an airplane or on a train with a VR headset stuck to their face? One. And I think that really sums it up. For a technology that's trying to go mainstream, for a technology that is trying to be a consumer product, it's still very much awkward. It kind of can be described as a mobile phone back in the 1990s. They were big, they were bulky. People would laugh at you in 1992, 1994 if you had a mobile phone. We're kind of like at that stage of the VR industry. Lack of content and proper content, and this is a bit of a cliche. You'll hear this all the time if you go to a VR conference. Where's the killer app? Where is that app that's going to change the industry as we know it? And it's still not there. Maybe it never will come. Maybe we're a few years away from that. And then a real interesting one, inorganic growth. So all the figures that we've heard today so far, a huge percentage of those, and I don't have the figures, I'm sure Jeremy would be a better person to ask than myself, but a huge percentage of that is inorganic growth in VR and AR. What does that mean? It means this is money being put in by investors rather than consumers saying, hey, I want to buy that. I want to buy that piece of headwear, that hardware, that software. These factors are holding back VR and, of course, more longer term AR as we know it. And what is it making us feel like? It's making us feel a little bit sad. A little bit sad, to be honest with you. There have been some articles and some pieces of news this year in particular that have kind of said that VR as an industry is becoming a little bit more of a barren desert. That there is a kind of a big freeze in 2017 with regards to VR. We're seeing a little bit of a stagnation in the market at the moment, as rather than having more VR companies producing more content, Not all hubs, of course. There are some hubs that are still growing, such as London and Berlin. But in general, there's a little bit of a stagnation. Many companies are deciding to go into cockroach mode, which means they're throttling down production and they're throttling down growth as they're waiting for the market to grow. And that is a dangerous waiting game, because rather than more people and more entrepreneurs producing more content, we're seeing it kind of stagnate. So what can I offer you in terms of tangible, realistic predictions over the next 3 to 5 years that could potentially help you and your startup within VR and AR content production specifically, potentially navigate yourselves into areas that could see a better long-term outcome? Well, I think the first thing is there isn't going to be exponential growth anytime soon. Sorry. I know a lot of people say, oh, VR is going to explode like a mushroom. It's going to be everywhere. Everyone's going to have one of these pieces of headset. No, they're not. 2016 was not the year of VR. It was the beginning of VR, yes, but it wasn't VR in terms of what we want it to be. Now, I want to emphasize, I'm standing on this stage today because I believe in this technology. I really do. And there are many people this year in particular that are saying, oh, VR, it's dead. It's back to the 1990s where it kind of made a bit of an entrance in the consumer market and then it popped. I don't believe that's the case. VR and AR are here to stay, but don't expect it to go exponential anytime soon. And the proof is in the pudding. Oculus, and as I'm sure all of you know, the Oculus Rift, Oculus have not released official numbers on the headset sold. There are predictions and there are kind of like bits of information that are out there, but they've not actually made an official release on the number of headsets that have been sold so far. And I think that says a lot. 2, if you are insisting on being a consumer-focused production company, so if you're going to be producing content for the end user, mobile is the way to go. Why? The figure I mentioned earlier of sales last year of 6.3 million headsets, of those, 4.6 million were Gear VR, which means they were mobile headsets. And why is that? Well, it's very obvious. We all have one of these in our pocket, especially the new generations of phones that are coming out so rapidly now. The technology is improving so very, very fast. Screen resolution is amazing. All the features that we are seeing in PC VR, such as room scale tracking, such as 6 degrees of freedom, proper input solutions, hand tracking, all of these little bits of technology are making their way onto the mobile platform over the next 2 years. So if you really want to be consumer focused, mobile VR is definitely where it's going to be. High-end PC growth will follow in a similar vein as the arcade industries did in the 70s, and I think this is quite a romantic perspective. A lot of people have been touting VR as a renaissance to the arcade. So the arcade business in the 70s and very early 80s was driven mainly by an economic factor that not many people had the money to buy an arcade console or a gaming machine to take home. And so people were willing to pay a premium to go to an arcade, have a social experience with friends, and enjoy that environment. And that is exactly what we're seeing today. We're seeing arcades for VR specifically pop up all over the world. China in particular is leading the charge with over 1,000 VR arcades that have opened, I think, over the last year, 2 years. And in particular, in developing countries, we're seeing this. Why? Because a lot of people don't have the cash to go ahead and buy a high-end PC and a headset. But they are very, very curious about this technology, which means they're more than happy to pay a premium to go to an arcade or even a shopping mall, a public space where VR is starting to have an inroad, and have a 10 to 15 minute experience as they get familiar with the technology. So that's a big industry there, either opening an arcade or producing for an arcade, which of course is a B to B to C model, business to consumer. Web VR is the lucky horse in this race, and surprisingly, I didn't hear it from Jeremy or Timothy today. I'm not sure why, but web VR is going to be huge. If we have any web developers in the house, this is something you should really be watching. This is being led mainly by players such as Google Chrome, Facebook, Microsoft with their mixed reality headsets. Some of them have been released or are releasing very, very soon. And it's the only point in a very splintered industry that is VR where they all come together. Just like websites 10 years ago began to introduce mobile integration, expect to see websites in the next 5 years begin to introduce a need for VR integration as well. Focusing on business-to-business applications is a safe bet in the medium term. This is what we do at Glitch. We only produce client projects. Why? Because if you're a CEO, a CTO, if you're a marketing manager, the chances are you have come across something to do with VR and AR. You've read an article, you've seen it in a magazine, and your company most likely has been exposed to mobile applications in the past. Maybe your company has a mobile app, maybe they've experimented with it, and it means there will be marketing budgets and R&D budgets for you to tap into as you help these organizations explore what VR and AR can do. And of course, earlier we heard of the many wide spectrum of use cases across many, many industries. So definitely consider for the medium term a business-to-business model if you are going to be a content producer. It also allows you to build up your talent and your experience, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But of course, the real deal will be augmented reality, and of course, many people are very, very excited about this. Anyone tried the HoloLens? Oh, quite a few. Meta? Okay. What about Magic Leap? No, I don't think so. I really want to try that. Anyway, these are going to be game changers in many, many regards, and they will, of course, eclipse virtual reality as we know it. I'm sure in the far future, VR will just be a slider option on your AR headset. But until then, it's a long-term game, and in my opinion, it falls outside what we're saying are predictions over the next 5 years. But if you do want to get involved in AR today, and we've had some excellent presentations on AR already, then of course AR Kit and AR Core are the way to go. AR Kit, of course, released with iOS 11, I believe, and some of their more recent phones, including the iPhone X, is compatible. And AR Core was Android's answer to the AR Kit, is available currently, I believe, only on the S8, the Samsung S8, but will be rolled out to also new generations. Why are they the short-term way into VR? Well, of course, again, they're using something we all have in our pocket. Players like Facebook, players like Apple, players like Android, they all know that the user is not ready to put on these awkward bits of plastic on their face. And that's exactly why Google Glass failed in its first iteration, although interestingly, we will be seeing Google Glass version 2 coming out next year, which I'm quite keen to see. Okay, so we've kind of gone through some of the predictions that at least we at Glitch are aiming to do, or aiming to focus on over the next 5 years. Now, let me talk through some of the lessons that we've learned as a VR and AR content producer that will hopefully serve you guys and girls in your own endeavors in this industry. So, first, focus. Why? You'd be surprised how many companies I come across that call themselves a virtual reality company, as if differentiating themselves just with the technology is going to be enough. It's not. You need to focus. If you don't focus, your customer won't know what you do, your client won't know what you do, you won't be able to build up brand presence now, which is the time to be building that up. So what do I mean by focus? Well, we've touched upon some already. Are you going to be, and again, I'm stressing content production side, are you going to be business to business? And we've mentioned that already, producing content for potential clients, both within VR and AR. It allows immediate cash in the door now. It's probably one of the only areas in the AR and VR, I should say VR industry, where there is some degree of cash to keep you guys afloat. Are you going to be business to consumer? bit of a risky business at the moment. There have been success stories like Job Simulator and other applications, but very limited. Very, very, very limited. What about business to consumer? What about producing something for these thousands of VR arcades and VR spaces that are opening up all over the world? Echo Arena. Anyone played that VR game before? So there are games that are coming out now that are focusing specifically on multiplayer. And the reason why I'm picking up on this is I believe that VR in particular will be revolutionizing the esports industry. And as I'm sure you know, the esports industry is worth billions of dollars, and its growth over the last few years has been exponential. Expect VR to be a very big part of that. So if you want to be a content producer, consider getting in to produce content for this, potentially an arcade or potentially a public space. High visibility projects. Boom. What do I mean by that? Well, of course, we got to keep the lights on. We got to pay the rent. We got to make sure we can pay the salaries. But now is the time to get your high PR projects up and running. So what do I mean by that? Is consider taking projects that will give you PR value in the long run over potentially projects that won't. We've had many opportunities to work with real estate companies. They want to film their places in 360. We've had opportunities to work with oil companies in Norway. And again, big payers, easy money. But in terms of value from a PR perspective, very, very low. Second video. So this was, and I'm going to apologize in advance for the quality, this was one of the first projects that we did even before Glitch was born. This was actually when we were back as an indie team. We worked with the Red Cross to produce an earthquake safety and survival experience that was shown at the World Humanitarian Summit. It was shown to hundreds of aid agencies around the world and has since been rolled out, in particular in schools, to help children in learning how to prepare for and hopefully survive an earthquake in earthquake-prone areas of the world. And as you can imagine, it's seen a lot of uptake. We've even seen clones being reproduced by other aid agencies around the world. There's even a clone on Steam, which is really bizarre, but that's great. If people are copying it, it means we've done something very, very good. And as you can imagine, it really, when we were back as an indie team, it really boosted our profile and opened many doors in talking to other non-for-profit organizations, aid agencies, and even potential clients as well, and opened the door for us to establish Glitch as an actual company. Yeah, we can stop it. So cash, show me the money. Now, cash, I'm not a startup consultant, so I can't obviously advise you in terms of how you manage your cash flow, but I can tell you what it means to be a poor startup in a cashless industry. And there are 3 things you should consider if you are in VR or AR or you're considering jumping in, which is if you don't have cash to maintain you in the next 2-3 years, you will struggle. So make sure you are tapping into something that will ensure that you will be surviving this barren desert that is the VR industry at the moment. Government grants. Right now, there's a lot of interest by non-for-profit organizations and governments to kind of just experiment with VR and AR at the moment. UNICEF is closing tomorrow, 12 o'clock, UNICEF is closing a $100,000 proposal tender for looking at how VR can be used to educate children in developing countries. So there are many, many opportunities out there. Why? Because people are curious to experiment with this technology. Investors, more of a hot topic back in 2016. There was a lot of investment, in particular in the US. A lot of investment firms wanted to kind of bring in their token VR or token AR company within their portfolio. Little bit less now. Doesn't mean you can't find it, but it won't be so easy. And of course, investment at the sacrifice of a percentage of your startup will allow you to maintain the next couple of years of cash flow. And then non-VR income channels, and this is what we do at Glitch, and this is actually something that I've seen replicated over and over again in companies that are touting themselves as a VR or AR company all over Europe. What do I mean by that? Simply that you will present yourself as a VR or AR content producer, but you are ensuring that you are keeping the lights on and paying the rent through potentially non-VR streams using the same talent pool. What is that talent pool? Designers, developers, 3D modelers, it could be post-production specialists, you name it. This skill set will cover not only what you're doing in VR and AR, but also potentially non-VR and AR channels as well. Oh, and there's a nice pretty picture of money. Okay, so freelancers versus full-time staff. So if you are entering the market, especially entering quite a cashless market, unless you want to be an indie team living in your parents' basement, you're going to have to consider what does it mean to hire people into your team. And of course, it's very normal and very natural that you'll be thinking, well, there's not much money in the market right now, so I'm just going to bring on freelancers. And I'm really strongly advising against that. Why? Because your competitive advantage today and over the next few years will be the experience that you have in this market. And we've heard some excellent presentations. I really enjoyed the one by Alessandro on AR. It really shows a knowledge bubble that their team have created with that. Lost my train of thought there. If you are looking to have freelancers on board, it means they're learning on your behalf. So you are paying them to come into in-house or freelance from home, build up that knowledge in whatever you're producing, then run off with that knowledge. If you can, hire. If you can't, keep your freelancers super close and hire them full-time when you can afford it. This is your unique selling point at the moment against your competitors. What about being an outsourced partner? So this presentation, when I presented it in Oslo, for example, was actually talking about sourcing talent hubs to outsource your production to. And that's exactly what we do at Glitch. We have a sales office in Oslo, a sales office in London, and we do a production out of Istanbul. So I split my time between London and Istanbul, and we've opened a production hub there. Why? Because the talent is very good, and when you compare it to the costs of hiring a developer, for example, in London, it's far, far better for a startup that is struggling with a cash flow. And of course, this, in regards to a dialogue with yourselves here in Ukraine, would be the opposite. You guys have exceptional talent here. Really, really talented developers, really talented artists, modelers, etc. You can be that outsourcing company. And I know there are a few organizations that are already positioning themselves along those lines. Glitch is actually looking to open a second production hub here in the Ukraine. So if there's anyone in the house that does something similar, we'd be very happy to talk to you after this presentation. Intellectual property. What are you guys going to create? You know, this is a really, really important question. It's so easy right now to just get caught up with, okay, I'm going to be producing content now for the consumer. I'm going to be producing content now for my clients. And you get buried in that. Keep your eyes on the long-term game. I've met so many companies that have come out of the mobile application boom, and they have nothing to show for it. They went from project to project, client to client, and now the saturation in the market means they're sitting on their ass with nothing to show for it. So keep your eyes on the long-term game. What are you going to be producing? Is it going to be the next WhatsApp for AR? Is it going to be some sort of algorithm with the HoloLens that allows you to scan someone's face and bring up their LinkedIn profile? Whatever it is, start thinking about what you want to make your IP in the long run now. And then the industry, and I butt heads with one of my partners on this because he's very adamant on this subject, but I'm going to stress it. Now the doors of the VR and AR industry are wide open. You can email anybody. You can call anybody. I had a dialogue with John Carmack via email. I'm like, oh my goodness, John Carmack, and I'm messaging this guy because people want to talk. People want to connect with you. They want to learn, they want to grow. So if there isn't, for example, a meetup here for VR and AR in Kiev, open one. If there isn't a VR AR association chapter, I'm sure Jeremy will want to talk to someone that will open something like that. Connect with the people around you. If they're students, if they're indies, if they're, whoever. These are the people that will be your business partners, your clients. These are the people that will be your employees or your employers. Now the doors are open, and they won't be open forever, so take full advantage of that from a community perspective. And why not just wait? Why not just wait? There are so many companies that are now, as I said, going into hibernation. There are so many companies that are coming out of accelerator programs with cash, sitting on that cash and saying, you know what, we're going to wait for the market to mature. Well, I'll tell you, if you're waiting for the cash and the cash is there, you're already too late. Now is the time to be taking advantage of your first mover advantage, building up your network, building up your brand, building up your knowledge base. Now is the time to be carving out your story in the VR and AR industry before it's too late. So thank you very much.